So just a quick update. Bev says she can't get in. It asks for a passcode. She puts in the passcode and it says that the meeting hasn't started. So I can cover for Bev.
Are we ready to
Yes.
call the meeting? So I'd like to call the meeting of the Administrative Committee to order. Are there any comments from the public on items that are not on any, if there are members of the public who have comments on items on the agenda, we can take them at the time that we consider those items. Does that apply to the consent calendar items as well? Anybody know?
Yeah, because it does.
Yes, okay. So any public comments on, anybody from the public like to comment on any item, any matter not on the agenda? Okay,
Sarah, you want to make the announcement on how public can comment? Raising hand or dialing *3 on the phone?
It's *9 for Zoom.
thank you.
Director Paul, we don't see any raised hands.
Thank you. Hearing no comments from the public, no raised hands, let us move to the consent calendar, the proposed consent calendar.
There is no consent calendar. It's basically the items for action on the agenda.
Oh, I am so sorry. I am looking at the wrong file. Okay. Excuse me one moment. I apologize to everyone.
That's all right. Just take your time.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I see that Bev made it.
Yes, I moved her over.
Oh, cool. So when the time comes, Bev, you'll just have to unmute because it shows that you're mute now, but. Will she be able to unmute, Sarah, or you might have to hover your cursor over to the left side, Bev, to see the mute and unmute buttons.
There you go.
Gonna have to
Sorry.
Hello.
Am I up?
Yep.
Not yet.
Not yet, but I can hear you.
Okay.
So Suresh, while Karen's trying to load up her agenda, you want to just identify what the first agenda item is?
Yeah, so the next item on the agenda, number 1, is the consider adoption of January 13, 2021 Administrative Committee meeting minutes.
Are there any corrections to the minutes of the January 13th committee meeting?
No,
Okay,
since I was the only one there.
Right.
all right.
I move adoption of the minutes.
Okay, let's ask the public if they have any, and then we can do that.
Do that in the, sorry. Where am I?
Chair, just ask the public have any comments on the minutes or want to pull anything.
Are there any comments from the public on the minutes of the January meeting? Or are there any items?
Madam Chair, I do not see any hands being raised.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's back to the board. Okay there, Director Anderson,
Oh.
make your motion.
I move that we adopt the minutes of the January 13th Admin Committee meeting.
Second that.
Okay, do we take a roll call?
You take a roll call. You're doing good.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Paul.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
So the next item on the agenda is consider expenditure of funds for maintenance and repair of the rearing channel liner at the Sleepy Hollow Steelhead rearing facility. And Thomas Christensen from staff will talk about that.
Actually, Bev's gonna do it because she got on at the last second here. So unmute yourself, Bev, and then Sarah will also bring up the item to share a few pictures.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Beverly Cheney. I'm the Associate Fisheries Biologist and the primary operator of the Sleepy Hollow facility. As you can see, I'm here to ask you to consider expenditure of funds for the repair and maintenance of the rearing channel liner at the facility. Sleepy Hollow was originally built in 1996. The liner and the channel, all the original components are now 25 years old. The liner is made out of a rubberized material called Hypalon. It has a usable lifespan typically of around 20 years when exposed to the elements like ours is. So at 25 years old, it's definitely nearing the end of its usable life. We've been getting small holes and tears, leaks over the years that we repair in-house, but we're getting a few that are too big for us to do. We need professional construction. So this item is to address the worst one of the leaks. It's at the tail end of the channel. We have a couple photos so you can see what we're talking about. This the photo you're looking at here is the area that we're going to replace. Need to remove the old liner. You can see it's all there's wrinkles in it. There's the seams are failing, and the floor of all these pools never had a cement bottom put in it. It's just sand. So over time, groundwater, roots, animals have come up and really made the bottom unstable and bumpy. It's causing more leaks. So this new project is going to remove it, add a new bottom, and then a fresh liner, waterproof the whole thing. So go ahead and show that the next one. Sarah, there it is. Okay, so it's hard to see what this is. It's just just a close up of the liner. The seams where it's connecting, the liner comes into the cement is where the leak is. So you can see how bumpy and wrinkled it is. So we're asking to, we want to hire Scardina Builders. They're located out in Carmel Valley Village. They've done a number of projects for us over the years, always do a very good job, very responsive, on time, on budget, and we know they're going to do a good job with this project. So their bid is $12,363 for this. We've asked for an additional $1,000 for contingencies. I don't anticipate needing that, but you never know.
Okay.
And then just so you can really see what's happening, we took a little video clip last fall that we'll run for you here. So this is the outside wall of the liner. I mean, the outside wall of the rearing channel, and the water is actually coming under the wall and bubbling up through the ground on the outside.
Mm.
And
Oh.
there's so much, it's like a little stream. It's eroding the bank and the electrical structures and everything around there. So I very much need this repaired before before we try and rear fish again this season. So with that, I will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
How, in what shape is I don't know, how long is the rearing channel?
The channel's 800 feet long and it has about 17 different sections. I think this section is the one that has the worst leak because it's where the rubberized liner connects to the concrete filter section downstream. So it had when it was built 25 years ago, they used some wood, some kind of cheap metal, and it's just over time, it's just corroded away. So I think that's why this particular section is the worst. Some of the other sections have pretty bad leaks that I think we'll be able to fix in-house,
Okay,
at least for this year.
yeah, that's what I was wondering, is if you have others that are gonna have to be done soon, would it be, you know, a good idea financially to package them together instead of have a separate, I have no idea how much it would cost, but if there's something that's just coming up.
We're actually kind of hoping to use this one as a test to see how it goes with a poured concrete bottom, to see if that helps things before we get too involved in the other sections.
Good idea.
He's more than willing to come back. You know, it's not like he's a major contractor from far away. You know, he's out here in the valley, and I think he'd be more than happy to come back as we need.
Find out how it works. Thank you.
Mhm.
Through the chair, a couple of questions. Okay, we got more of this to work on, like Director Anderson said, and I heard your comments, but I'm a little concerned because we just put a lot of money in out there. Now we're coming back with stuff that we need to repair. After 25 years, we need to find out all that and bring it to the board so we can give you the money to pay for. How are we paying for this one?
It's part of the usual Sleepy Hollow maintenance and operating budget because we didn't know about these leaks until we operated last summer. You know, it was after the budget was put in, so we did not have enough money in the budget for it. I mean, we have enough to cover it, but that leaves us not really enough for other things that may pop up.
Yeah, you need to go out there and find out everything that needs to be done so we can get it fixed out there. You know, one thing I hate to do is put in millions of dollars and then a few months later, oh, we need to fix this, we need to fix that. Another one for you is, okay, I believe in letting local people do local work. But then I also believe in putting out bids to everybody to give them a chance. So they say, you know, it's been offered. So did we put this out to bid or anything? Or this person's been working out there so long that we just got used to working with him? Can somebody answer that?
I can answer that. It's not that we've been working with him so long. He originally came and did a project for us about 3 years ago. When I had, I think, 4 separate contractors I invited out to the site because of your concerns then, I believe. And everybody gave me bids. Scardina was about half the price of the other ones. And so, and they did great work. So I know his pricing is fair. We have a really good relationship with him. And, you know, he is familiar with the site, you know, so it's just helpful. It's just helpful for us to know that he knows what it's about and is able to come out and do the work.
Good, but I also believe in, hey, you got to offer it out there. We're a public agency. You got to put it out to bid. And then we come back. If you come back with that, the lowest price, and that's the best person, I can understand that. But I believe in putting it out to bid for everybody got a shot at it, like you did before. So that's one of my concerns. So if we got to do future work out there, let's do it. Let's put those bids in a packet so we know that, hey, we doing everything we supposed to do as a public agency. That's all I got on that one.
I have a few questions, follow up to some of the points that the other directors just raised. As far as the putting it out to bid, is it a requirement? And that's a question for our general counsel.
Maybe I can offer that. This is a repair and replacement project. It does not require a bid.
Okay,
However, for cost comparisons, we can definitely acquire cost from different competing companies, but we are not required to go put out a bid on the street.
okay. I just thought it'd be good to know. It still may be a good idea, as Chair Edwards points out. My other question has to do, I think, Bev, you said that this facility has a 20-year useful life, more or less. So have you considered the full range? I feel like we should have an idea of the full range if there's, extensive work to be done to throughout this whole facility. Do we have an idea of the scope and the cost and over what period of time we can expect to have to do that work?
Yeah, specifically the liner is what I'm referring to with the 20 years. I mean, we've been,
Okay.
we've been maintaining and repairing as needed, ever since we built. And the fact that we've spent a lot of money recently on the intake project is different than this. This is not, this liner has nothing to do with the project we just finished. It's
Okay.
just regular maintenance,
Okay.
things wear out. And so we maintain them as we go. And as far as like knowing exactly what's, I know the liner over time is going to have issues, but other things pop up and we take care of them as they come up. I can't, I don't know what's going to
Oh,
go bad,
I
Yeah,
understand.
it strikes me that we might want to consider doing this project, figuring out if, paving or cementing the base, the floor is the way to go, see how the liner works, and then package up the remaining segments into one large whole liner replacement project during the next construction window next year, and bring that through the budget process this spring.
Okay. I mean, one just sort of difficulty, because it's Sleepy Hollow, it has to be difficult. The pools are, we do want to do that. Larry and I have discussed doing that. The riffles in between the pools have so many tons of rock on top of it. There's really, I can't see how to ever get that rock out and redo it, but we can do the pools, and that's where most of these leaks are. So I think that would be very helpful.
Thank you, and thanks for clarifying. The general manager's suggestion sounds like a good one to me. Do the other directors have comments on that?
Oh, yeah, I agree with that. As long as we can, we got a lot of work. We put a lot of money in out there, and we had a former director that always talked about replacement costs. So if we get stuff fixed, we can start building up that replacement cost. I'm gonna give him a shout out, Director Hoffman. Y'all know how he was. So hey, that's what we need to start working on.
Okay. Any more discussion on the agenda item? Then, do we have, this would be a motion to recommend to the board appropriating this money. Is that correct?
Yes, but after you ask the public, do they want to comment on the item?
Okay, do we have anyone on the line from the public at this point?
See no raised hands, Director Paul.
Okay, thank you. Then is there a motion to recommend adoption of this proposal to the board?
I'll make that motion. And I don't know if we need to add it, but with Dave's suggestion that it's analyzed once this happens to see how it works, and then more consideration for the rest of the places that have problems in
And-
the rearing pool.
I would agree. I agree with that and put it in the motion so we can go into the staff report so the full board can understand what we are doing. So we can add it to the motion for the staff report.
Okay, so the motion we're considering now is to recommend to the board approving the expenditure for this portion of the liner replacement that's requested, and consider what we expect to be the remainder of the work on the liners repairs in the spring, when we take up the spring budget item, and have the staff prepare that information for that board meeting. Have I summarized it correctly?
Yeah, well, I would just add, once they analyze if this is the right fix, they've got to see if this adding the cement bottom is the right fix.
Right.
That's
To see
Yeah.
what we can.
I might not know that till I have a season of operation.
Ah.
You know, we don't run until summer, so I might not know, but it may be obvious right away that this is great, you know, so we could look into that.
Okay, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We may
Hmm.
not have the information yet. Okay. We can still bring it up for the spring budget consideration. Whatever information we can get about what additional work will probably be required.
Okay.
Okay, are we ready to take do we have a second for the motion?
We have a second.
Okay, let's take the roll call then.
Director Anderson,
yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Paul.
Yes,
Motion passes 3-0.
okay.
Next item on the agenda is item number 3, which is to direct the general manager to enter into a contract with Zim Industries to rehabilitate ASR 1 for an amount not to exceed $113,350. And John Leah from staff has that stuff, no? You muted, John.
Thank you, Suresh. Good afternoon, directors. This item is to continue the work. I'm getting a little bit of a reverb here. To continue work that was directed to be completed. It was originally to be completed early last year. Some of the background is in operating these ASR wells. They will plug over their operating life cycle due to systems or pipe scale in the system and just general use of the well, and they will become less and less efficient over their lifetime. Thing that you do is you pull them apart and you mechanically swab them and treat them with chemicals, and you can recover productivity in the well. This would be the second time that this has been done for ASR 1 since it was drilled in 2001. We initially noticed that the performance of the well was falling off when Cal-Am was using the well to recover in the 2019 summer. This well is one of the wells that can hook to the transfer pipeline and can bring water over to the Forest Lake tanks. It is an important well in that it is used as one of the primary wells that's permitted to recover pure water Monterey water. It was originally envisioned that the district would move into rehabilitating this well and have it ready for the 2020 the most recent summer recovery season, so it could be used to recover pure water Monterey. We had gone and had this action approved at the March 16th board meeting. The staff note indicates we did go out and solicit quotes from qualified contractors and chose the lowest quote at that time back in February and March. We were directed by the board on consent to move forward with that action. But then in March, at the onset of COVID, we were talking with CalAm in the planning meetings we hold with them, and they had indicated that there was some level of uncomfortableness with pulling the well apart and moving with the uncertain times, not knowing if the workforce or that anything of supply chain would be interrupted by COVID. And it was decided that the prudent thing would be to hold the work off and use the well in the condition that it was in over the most recent summer recovery season. And that was done. And we are now moving to complete this work. And the reason we're bringing it back to you is that since we received the quote, there was a 3% cost increase in the original quote due to differences in prices of chemicals and labor from the quote we received in February 2020. And so we have come back and added a 5% contingency. And the thing that has changed is the amount to authorize the general manager to enter into the contract with Zim. So that is my report, and I'm available for questions.
Thank you, John. Do we have any?
Can you tell John is a musician? He used the term reverb for that feedback.
Yeah, reverb.
So John, if we went with the last contract that we signed, we still would have to do the adjustment, right?
Correct. We got a quote, and the quote was good for 90 days. And so we're basically just going back and said, what does it cost today instead of in February 2020? And the answer was 3% more.
Oh, okay. Well, we're gonna have to start doing the work after we sign. It's instead of the land, because it seemed like it costs us more. Okay. I know I've seen this before. Thank you.
I'm a little confused about the contingency. The contingency,
Yeah, the contingency, when you are rehabilitating a well, you take it apart and then you go in with the nylon brushes and you brush the screen, and then you go through and you swab the well, which is kind of, it's a tool that's about 20 feet long, and it has rubbers on the top and bottom of it, and you move it up and down in the well to agitate the water and bring material that has been deposited onto the filter pack in the screen. And some areas of the screen are dirtier than others, and you commonly go through, and the amount of time you spend on different zones of cleaning the well depends on real-time measurements you're taking. So the contingency is basically for time if we find some areas of the well that are dirtier than others, to make sure we get it clean.
okay, but there was a contingency added to the original quote, correct?
There was not, and that was an error on my part.
Oh, okay, all right, that's why I was confused. It was about how it was calculated. Thank you.
John, I have a question. This was built in 2001, and then it was last rehabbed in 2007. So that was only a six-year period of time. 2007 to now is 14 years. Is that unusual to have such a short initial period before it needed rehab, and then a twice as long?
It is somewhat unusual, but it's not the unusual situations did not arise around the well itself, more about changes in the CalAm system and the way that water was routed to the well, changing of the flows, and reversing of flows in the system. And you couple that with there were building out of ASR 2 and then ASR 3 and then ASR 4, and the ability to use those other wells and to utilize them, that one hasn't seen as much action as it did when it was first new.
Thank you. That
Other
makes-
questions for John? Are there any comments from the public on this item? Okay, any discussion by directors?
Now I make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, let's go have a roll call unless, I presume we're not going to have more discussion on this motion. Roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Director Edwards.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Next up, we have item number 4, which is consider approval of expenditure for purchase of Ford F-150 4x4 truck. We did approve a WIA, which is Fish Counting Station project, about a year ago. Thomas Christensen, who is the division manager, just got that WIA built and in operation. We have hired a new staff for the WIA program, who will be starting the first week of March. And so we do need a vehicle that will basically be dedicated to the fish counting station. We did go out and secured bids from 3 Ford dealers, and those bids are attached in the staff note. We have historically, district has been buying different brands of vehicles, but since 2010 or 2011, we've tried to uniform the vehicle manufacturers. So we've only started buying Ford vehicles. We do get a huge steep discount for Ford vehicles because we are a public agency. And so Ford has a program, what's called Ford Fleet discount program. And so we get about $7,000 discount on this vehicle that we are proposing to buy. And so we secured bids from Cypress Coast Ford, North Bay Ford, and Mission Valley. And the cheapest one was the local one, which is Cypress Coast Ford at $33,270.75. What we are proposing is to secure or buy a vehicle from Cypress Coast Ford for a not to exceed $34,000, and the $800 or $780 change is basically just for unforeseen documentation, or in case if the tax goes up, which I don't feel it's going to go up in the next month or so, but it takes about 2 to 3 months for us to secure the vehicle. Because these are the vehicles that we can't, because it's part of the Ford Fleet program, we cannot get the vehicles off the parking lot. It basically has to be built at the factory. So once it gets built and gets delivered to us, it takes about anywhere from 2 to 4 months is the normal typical cycle. So when the vehicle gets done, that's why we're getting the $800 extra contingency, just in case if there's any addition to the documentation or taxes. So we'd be covered for that. This vehicle was budgeted. Unfortunately, we carried the older amount from the last 2 years. It's been carried over a 2 budget cycle. And so we still continue to carry the $25,000 budget item. When it comes to mid-year budget next month, we will adjust the budget to show the difference between 25 and 34, but it is a budgeted item. And then with that, any questions?
I have one, which is not directly, doesn't go directly to this proposal, but it's related. For future vehicle purchases, has the district considered trying to acquire low emissions vehicles, in terms of our carbon footprint?
We have done that, not for this work truck vehicles, but we have done that for other fleet vehicles. We have 2 vehicles that are basically EV, electric vehicles that we acquired. And those vehicles are for administration runs. We also have another vehicle, which is a hybrid that we acquired, and those are for administration vehicles. Right now, the work trucks are not hybrid or EV type vehicles, but Ford is working on trucks, F-150 trucks that are going to be hybrid or EV vehicles. And once those are available, definitely we will recommend that lower emission vehicles be acquired.
Thank you.
So are we getting replacement vehicles every year?
Not
for
every
fleet?
year. Not every year. We do have a replacement schedule that we basically float out with the budget. And so depending on when and how old the vehicle is and what the mileage on the vehicles is, we estimate the vehicles to last between 5 to 10 years because the low miles that we drive, our vehicles are driven. These vehicles are lasting about 15 years or so. So every so often, yes, we do rotate the vehicles, and last few years we've been changing those vehicles out. Next year, next budget cycle, there is at least 1 vehicle that's slated for replacement. But this is not a replacement. This is an additional vehicle.
And that goes back to y'all know how I am. Give me the full package. Every month, y'all piecemealing it. You know, last month it was something else. Last month it was the first we approved, and then next month, stop piecemealing. Give me the full package. It may be a big number, and that's something we can probably swallow because everything is in it. Okay.
I just have a comment. I don't know how many of you saw the article today in the Herald, but there's a rash of theft of catalytic converters going on.
Mhm.
We have a friend that had one stolen, and I guess they're getting rare minerals from these catalytic convertibles converters and selling them. So there's all kinds of questions. I mean, suggestions about how you can, if other of our vehicles are electric, you know, I guess they're all at risk. One of the suggestions was to let the air out of the tires at night so they can't get under the car. Well, that's a hassle, but what a bummer.
Yeah, it's a good point. We've had tools stolen from vehicles. You know, we're always kind of diligent about how we park. We've been leaving lights on in the front and the back of the building. But yeah, we're always at risk.
Those little, they suggested those little cameras too that apparently are inexpensive and they're quite effective to catch the perp. I think people don't have enough to do.
Other comments? Okay. Do we still have any members of the public on the at the meeting?
We have 3 in attendance.
Okay. Do any members of the public have a comment on this item?
See no raised hands.
Okay. Thank you.
Move approval.
And a reminder to the phone listeners, it's *9 to raise a hand. So we have 2 phone listeners and 1 participating via Zoom.
Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve this item?
Make a motion to approve.
Second,
Okay. Roll call, please.
Director Edwards,
Approval.
Director Anderson,
yes.
Director Paul.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Next item on the agenda is item number 5. It is the election of secretary and treasurer for 2021. Historically, it has been board's past practice to elect the general manager as the district secretary and the district administrative services manager, CFO, to serve as the treasurer. What we do is typically in December, we take this election of officers to the board and get the election completed. But in December 2020, when we went to the board for the election of the chair and vice chair for 2021, we did not select, or we did not have the board elect the treasurer and secretary. So it was a mistake on our part that we omitted the appointment of the secretary and treasurer. So this item basically is recommending that the district treasurer be elected, general manager be elected as district secretary, and the ASD manager, myself, be elected as the district treasurer. And we do get a hefty salary package for those positions.
Sure. I remember asking you, Suresh, who's the treasurer when we were reading one of the report. Who's the treasurer? Any questions or comments?
No comments on it.
Okay. Any questions or any comments from the public? If you're joining us by phone, please dial *9 to unmute yourself if you want to say something.
See no raised hands.
Okay. Then I move for that we adopt this item, approve this item.
I'll second it.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Paul.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Okay.
Next, item number 6 is to receive the Pension Reporting Standards Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 68, Accounting Valuation Report. And I have a brief presentation with about 10 pages or so. So bear with me just a second. So this is item number 6, yes. So just a couple of background and just to explain what the process is and how we go about doing the GASB 68 and all that. And since the two directors are brand new, this would be a refresher for Director Edwards and a new stuff for the new directors. So what is GASB? GASB was established in 1984. It's called Governmental Accounting Standards Board. And they are basically the independent private sector organization that establishes the accounting and financial reporting standards for the US state and local government agencies like ourselves. And all of those are followed in accordance with the generally accepted accounting principles, so commonly referred to as GAAP. So that's a little bit blurb on what GASB is. So then what is GASB 68? In June 2012, GASB board approved new reporting statement, which was called GASB number 68. And there was a lot of uproars when GASB 68 was introduced. A lot of work was involved with that. And when they introduced the statement in 2012, they said it had to be implemented by June 30th, 2015 financials. And so we have been in compliance since the 2014-2015 financial statements. And what GASB 68 was basically to record the net pension obligation on financial statements. So you can imagine if an agency had a asset with CalPERS as, let's say, simplistically $5 million, and then the liabilities was at $10 million, you have a net pension obligation of $5 million. And so everybody had to report that $5 million as a liability on the financial statements. Now, remember, prior to this statement in 2012, that liability number was always reported, but not on the financial statements. It was basically presented on the notes part of the financial statement. So it did not impact your balance sheet or statement of net position. it basically said, as a side note, that said, yeah, this agency has this much in pension obligation, but now with GASB 68, it had to go on the financial statement. So it was not a big deal for an agency like our size, because our NPO was about $5 million, net pension obligation was about $5 million. But you can imagine cities that have hundreds of millions of dollars of this net pension obligation, all of a sudden their financial statements looked like they owed a lot of money. And that was not the case. It basically was just a reporting statement. There was no requirement on funding this. So even though it was reported on the financial statements as a liability position, but really uh, there was no requirement to say that, yeah, you have to come up with that kind of money. So that's what GASB 68 is in a nutshell. And why are we doing GASB 68? Because we're part of PERS. We provide the PERS retirement, which is a California Public Employees Retirement System, or referred to as CalPERS. We have two basic plans with the CalPERS. One is the Classic members, which is for any employees that joined PERS agency prior to January 1, 2013. They are on the district's 2% at 55 formula. And then anybody that joined the district after January 1, 2013, they go on the what's referred to as the PEPRA. And what PEPRA is basically a reform that was done legislatively back in 2012. And so that basically has a 2% at 62 formula. So we are part of PERS. And so as part of providing the retirement benefits, we have to do the GASB 68 reporting. So what does it entail for us in terms of what do we do? The contribution sharing for the employee, we did reach an agreement with the employees about 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know the exact, I don't remember the exact date, but the employees are to share the pension cost with the district. Prior to reaching that agreement, the district was paying all 100% of the employer and employee contribution. But now the employees are paying 8% of the contribution. And I'm going to do this in the, so in 2018, 2019, district paid on the district side of the pension cost was about $420,000. And on the employee side of it, they contributed $209,000. In 1920, district paid about $469,000 or $470,000, and employees paid about $175,000. And you can see there's a couple of lines in there. One is the ER, which is referred to as employer. EE is referred to as employee. And then there's the normal cost. And normal cost is basically calculated based on the percentage contribution. As we go along, we pay people. Every 2 weeks, we calculate the normal cost contribution and pay to PERS. And then there's the UAL, which is basically unfunded accrued liability. I don't know if it's my system, I'm getting feedback. The UAL, which is the unfunded accrued liability. And so that's basically paid at the beginning of the year. And so that's a lump sum cost, which in addition to the normal cost, the district has to pay for the UAL. So that's what the contribution kind of like are in a nutshell. And as I had mentioned, the employees are paying about 8% of the contribution. And so that kind of like was ramped up from 0% to 8% over a 3-4 year contract. Don't exactly remember that now. So getting into the net pension liability, what exactly is net pension liability? That is the difference of there's a formula here now. There's a difference of TPL minus FNP and which is equals to a net pension liability. So what is TPL? TPL is the total pension liability, and that is the portion of the actuarial present value of projected benefits for the employees. And an important date here is the measurement date. And measurement date is basically when CalPERS calculates that, not currently as of today. So basically, when we talk about these GASB 68 numbers, CalPERS is always a year behind. So when we are looking at the June 30th, 2020 financials, really we are looking at the measurement date of June 30th, 2019. And then what they do is they basically roll forward the numbers to make it into a June 30th, 2020. But the actual numbers are from June 30, 2019, and with some estimation that gets into the current fiscal year. So The TPL actually is, as of the measurement date, that's what the total pension liability is. And then what's the FNP? That is the fiduciary net position, the actual amount of assets held in a pension plan or trust for a plan, again, as of the measurement date. And sometimes it's also referred to as the market value of assets. So basically, all of the contribution that we've made to CalPERS, they put it in, hold it into the plan, and they've invested into the market. So that's basically our asset. So that's what our net position is, the fiduciary net position. And then here's the NPL, which is the difference of the TPL and the FNP, the net pension liability. And that's just the difference between the total pension liability and the fiduciary net position. And so that's what needs to get reported on our financial statements, is the net pension liability. So that getting to the net pension liability. So the measurement date is what's listed on top, which is June 30th, 2017, June 30th, 2018, and then the one in red bar, June 30th, 2019. The net pension liability, NPL, the first line there, $5.5 million, that's what's reported on our June 30th, 2020 financial statements. And you can see what we've done here is showing the 3 years of net pension liability over the last 3 years. How has it done? You can see from 2017, it went down a little bit in 2018, and then it went up a little bit 2018. So this fluctuates, and in the next slide or two, and I'll help understand why it fluctuates quite a bit. But there are some important numbers to note here, which is the discount rate. You can see in 17, it was 7.375, 18, it was 7.25%, and then in 2019, it's 7%. And then the investment rate against the discount rate, which this is the actual investment rate or return on the money with CalPERS, it's 8.6 in 2017. You can see it went down to 6.7, which is below what was the discount rate, projected discount rate. And then in 2019, it even went down further. So if the investment rate does go down, it does hurt the assets that we have in the plan, because they've invested this money in the market, and they are expecting that they are going to be getting, for 2019, they were expecting that they were going to be getting at least a 7% rate of return. Well, guess what? They did not get 7%. They got less than 7%. So that does hurt our financial statements. That does hurt our NPL, because our calculations are based on the discount rate that says, yeah, we've invested all this money. Your net pension liability is calculated based on a 7% discount rate. But if you don't get 7% discount rate, then basically we get adjustments. And so that's why the change in net pension liability can happen, fluctuate from year to year. On the hindsight, if the actual investment rate return comes higher than that discount rate, the projected discount rate, then our net pension liability will go down. And you can see there was some change in 2018. It went down a little bit. So then the other line, which is the very last line, which is the funding status, the percentage. So that basically says how much of our net pension liability is funded, which is basically you taking the asset and the liability, and it says we are 73% funded. That number, also fluctuates a little bit within 1% or 2% every now and then, unless there's a big sticker shock to the market. If it goes into negative territory for a couple of years, then we will see those numbers shift downwards. Or if the market's doing really well and exceeds the discount rate every year, then you'll see the funding status go up. Oops. So explaining the change in liability, why there was a change in liability in 2019 went down by a little over $88,000. And what happened? Well, the discount rate changed from 7.375% to 7.25%. It should have actually made our pension liability go up. So there was a upward trend there, but then the change offset by the investment rate of return on prior year. So the 2017 year was 8.6%, but the year before in 2016, their actual rate of return was 11.6% compared to a 7.5% discount rate. So there was a good favorable market trend there. And so that offset in the interest rate earnings basically, and the discount change created a net delta of the change in liability by $88,000. In 2020, it went up by 440,000. And why? Those are the two reasons there. Is the discount rate basically went down from 7.25 to 7%. And the change in the investment rate of return, which is 6.7% from the prior year against a 7%. And so there was some trend that created that the change in liability to go up. So every year you'll see these numbers go up or down, and that basically will trigger based on how the market does. The potential future impacts, we will see that the net pension liability number will definitely go up because the investment rate of return for 2019, you can see was 4.7% against a 7% expected discount rate. They did do the mortality adjustments back in 2018. What they did was their mortality rate was basically, they found out when they did the study is that people were living longer than what the expected mortality rate that they were using. And so they went back and adjusted that in 2018. So that has impact to us, and that's going to continue to have an impact over the next couple of years. And then the discount rate in 2018, they were using 7.75% discount rate. They looked at it and they made an adjustment. They said, well, we'll stabilize this over the next few years. And so that's gone up to gone down to 7% now. So that has an impact that will basically continue to be seen over the next few years. And then a major one that's going to be hitting us is the amortization period change. What they are doing is they used to amortize all of the losses and gains over a 30-year period. They've changed the amortization period from 30 to 20. So that's going to have a impact to us because if you amortize something over 30 years, the annual cost is somewhat lower than if you were to amortize it over 20 years. So it's just like a loan. If you take a loan, a mortgage loan, a 30-year mortgage loan basically has a lower payment versus a 20-year mortgage loan. So that will have an impact for us as well over the next few years. This is just to show what the net investment return is. And this is important because basically this is how the fund gets, the net pension liability gets calculated, because they do look at this, the actual investment rate of return, and say, okay, what did we expect and how did it do? So you can see 2016 was only 0.6% against a in 2016 was 7.75 was the discount rate. So you can see it was a big sticker shock because the markets were not doing well in 2016. But then they came around in 2017, you can see it was 11.2%. So did really well against a 7.375. And then in 2018, did somewhat well. It was over the expected discount rate. And then 2019 was low. 2020 was low as well. And we don't know where 2021 is going to be. But, depending on how fast the investments have recovered and to see if they are actually coming close to what the expected discount rate is, or if it's going to be somewhat lower. And then on the right-hand side, the table, this is important as well, because you'll see what the rates have done over a long-term period. Now, PERS is a long-term, they have a long-term financing strategy. They don't do this on a short-term basis. So if you can see on a 30-year basis, yeah, they are meeting the expected discount rate. But on a 20-year, they are not. And on a 10-year basis, if you compare that, it's not. I mean, it is. It's 8.5%. And then on a short term, if you look at 5 years or 3 years, you can see that both of those are missing the marks. Now, all of the conferences that I've attended, there were talks that CalPERS may even look at reducing the discount rate lower than 7%. Because they don't think that it is sustainable. We haven't heard anything since then, so it is yet to be seen that if that discount rate will stay at 7% or if they will reduce that further down than 7%. As they reduce the discount rate, the net pension liability obligation will actually grow. So we'll have to wait and see how that impacts us. But the district's net pension liability has been hovering around the $5 million mark. So what has the district done? We have created a reserve fund to address the unfunded position. However much it is, it's a very small fund, but this was kind of like a seed money. We created that in 2018, 2019, and we set aside 100,000, and we said 100,000 goes towards the pension obligation and 100,000 goes towards the OPEB obligation, and OPEB will deal more with that on the next item. So we did set aside 100,000 18-19. We set aside again 100,000 in 19-20, and then the current fiscal year budget 2021, we've set aside 100,000. So even though these are small money, but we have started addressing it. Remember, this is kind of like a rolling mortgage. You don't have to pay that $5 million today. It all is generated based on employee demographic. As employees retire, as employees get off the PERS system, as employees expire, I mean, these liabilities do change, from year to year. So as long as the district has taken steps on addressing this, which we feel that setting aside separate money to address the unfunded liability program is, it's going to be suited well. Because if you imagine that we keep aside, let's just say we set aside $100,000 each year, in 30 years, we could have a lot of money set aside towards that. So as long as we keep funding the unfunded liability, we will be doing fine.
And keep in mind that the GASB reporting does not reflect those reserves that we set aside. So it doesn't reduce the net pension liability that you see on paper, because they're not dedicated trust funds specific for that purpose. So that you have it. And so if you looked at the 3-year difference where it went up, well, it went down and then it went up again. If you were to take the 300,000 off of the third year, the 5560, we'd actually be in basically the same place we were 3 years at the 2017 number.
Correct.
It's a little puzzling to me why the monies in the reserve fund are not, don't offset.
Because you still have discretionary authority over the monies in the reserve fund. Mm-hmm. And so they could evaporate overnight is if you change your priorities.
I see. And what was the reason that the amortization period was changed?
They basically looked at it and they said 30 years was too long and it was costing agencies a lot of money. Because if you pay mortgage over 30 years versus 20 years, 20 years is a higher payment. But at the end of the day, the cost on a 20-year amortization versus 30-year amortization is far better.
Thank you.
And it will reduce the liability faster. So they kind of push it off their books a little quicker.
Yeah, it's like a rolling mortgage. They calculate the 20 years today, this year, and then you come back next year. It's again the newer portion of the liability, which is basically the change in market shift, gets created another either a favorable or unfavorable liability, and that gets rolled again into a 20-year amortization. So every year, as this one falls off in 20 years, you'd have another one that's going to fall off in another year. So it keeps going on because you have the liability changes every year.
In your opinion, this setting aside this level of reserves is adequate? And I'm addressing that question to both you, Dave, and Suresh.
Well, yeah, I would say not completely adequate. That we may want to increase it, but we are still capable of paying on an annual basis, and it isn't a big chunk of our budget. If we had a bunch of retirees, which we're getting, with long lives left, so the mortality rate's way out there, so that liability could increase quickly. And so you may want to offset your rate of increase in the liability with more set aside. But we are also, we're a rate setting organization. So we've got powers to actually increase revenue to maintain annual payments as opposed to trying to pre-fund them. Whereas cities and counties who don't have revenue raising authority are in a different predicament. So if your costs of your liabilities start to increase and you don't have a way to raise your revenue, then you have to decrease services. Right now, the increases have been minor, and we've had the ability to recover them, for example, in our user fee. So we're in a little bit better position, I would venture, than a major city or county, because our user fee is a percentage of an increasing revenue source as well. So we get to kind of track it. But the fact that we're looking at it, that's the important thing.
So we can continue if we see a trend of, I mean, if it stays, if the liability stays roughly the same level, is one situation. If we see a trend that it's increasing, we might have to reduce it.
Exactly. So if, as it's gone, let's just ignore the middle column. So it went up 400,000. I'm sorry, a little over 300,000. And we also set aside 300,000. So we actually had no net change. But if the discount rate goes down and the investment rate goes way down, and the net impact is that the liability shoots up, then you may want to say, hey, while we still have revenues, let's start putting $200,000 a year away, or 300,000. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other questions?
I was going to
Comments?
say, just to add to Dave's comment, the PEPRA reform is going to help the agencies, not immediately, but in the near future, like about 5 years or 10 years out, because as the employees are retiring, the newer employees are coming on the PEPRA plan, and the PEPRA plan are costing much less than what the classic plan is costing.
Dave or Suresh, when the adjustments need to be made, who's making them? The district and the employees? Are they both paying in, or just the district is paying for the adjustments?
Go ahead, Suresh.
Yeah, the change in rates. So the employee adjustments are basically, the employee contribution are fixed. So employees will only get to contribute that 8%. That's the maximum contribution. Any adjustments that are made, it's actually on the district side.
Okay, so that's a negotiating item, right?
It was actually under pension reform. So the maximum you could go was 8%. And so we moved our employees to the 8% over a period of several years.
Correct.
So you can't, there are other organizations who have attempted to bargain it and get greater contributions, but by law, you can't just take any more than 8%.
Okay, thank you.
So that completes my presentation on this item.
Scintillating.
Thank you, Suresh. Appreciate it. I know it's probably not a lot of fun for those who are very familiar with this, so we appreciate it. Any other questions from directors? Okay.
I'd venture a guess it's less fun for people who are less familiar with it.
Probably.
Not totally unfamiliar. Not an expert by a long stretch, but a little bit familiar. Shall we go out to the public to see if there are any members of the public?
Yeah, there are no raised hands.
We do have one. We do have one raised hand.
Oh, you do?
Yes, John Tilley.
No, he just did that. Yeah. Okay.
He must been waiting on this one.
Okay, can we unmute Mr. Tilley?
Actually, he's muted now. Sarah, you want to unmute him?
I'm attempting to.
Oh, is he in? Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. A nice presentation, Suresh. That's quite a topic. It's very impactful on the balance sheet. It really is a black hole of civic balance sheets, just the unfunded liability of retirement. I wanted to ask, within the expenditures, do you know the number of employees that are currently on the payroll that are being funded out of in that number versus who are no longer at the district? Because I assume that you pre-fund before people retire. Wait for an answer, or not? Is that something I can ask?
Chair Paul, you want me to answer that?
Well,
If not, I can really follow up on that at another
Yeah,
time.
I think it's the only public comment. If you've got any information at your fingertips, Suresh, go ahead and answer.
Yeah, so it's funding for 22 active employees, and I believe 13 or 15 retirees. I'm not 100% sure on that. I'll have to go and look at my PERS report to definitely say how many retirees are on the plan. I believe it's 15.
Thank
the
you.
information is a public record, correct? So that if a member of the public needs it or we need it, we can find it, right? Suresh?
Correct. We have that information, yes.
Yes.
I'm seeing that the current budget is a $647,000 expense for retirement. Is that the number you expect to hit in this fiscal year? And how come the June 30th 20 numbers weren't included in the presentation? I saw the 19s were there. Seems like the 20s would be available at this point or not. Is it more about the discount rates and the returns?
No, so 20 numbers are not available right now. The measurement date is June 30th, 2019, and those are the numbers that gets rolled forward into the 2020 financial statement. So for GASB 68 purposes, we are using the 2019 measurement date number for 2020 purposes, but 2020 numbers are not going to be available until June of 2021.
Thank you. And then lastly, if I may, just a comment, with the budget of the district, part of that is the water supply charge, a very large part of that, which is to be sunsetted at some point. So I wouldn't scale the district to the current level of revenue in hopes that the water supply charge will be sunsetted as was voted upon by the public. Thank you very, very much for allowing me to comment, and thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Any other member of the public who would like to comment?
See no raised hands.
So is there a motion to approve this item?
So it is to receive the item.
To receive it, I'm sorry.
I
Is there-
move to receive it.
Second. Okay, let's go to a roll call, please.
Director Edwards,
Director Edwards, are you muted?
Yeah.
Yes. Move to receive. Yes.
Okay,
Director Paul,
yes,
Director Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
thank you.
Next item on the agenda is item number 7, which is to receive the Governmental Accounting Standards Board Statement number 75, accounting and financial reporting for post-employment benefits other than pensions. This will go fairly fast since there are a couple of slides that we've already looked at. Nope, that's not the right one. There we go. Sorry. So this is another statement, GASB 75. GASB just keeps sitting there and churning up statements every year. It's quite a bunch of them. I won't go over what is GASB. We've already went over it with GASB 68. So we will go over what GASB 75 is. In July 2004, GASB came out with statements number 43 and 45, and that was to do the financial reporting requirements for OPEB. OPEB stands for Other Post-Employment Benefits, and to be implemented by fiscal year 2009-10 financials. We did comply with that. What GASB 43 and 45 is basically that was just to record the current year OPEB obligations on the financial statement. So it's not really the delta between what the total obligation and how much asset you have. So it wasn't the difference of the total. It was basically the difference for the current year. So basically it said, what exactly is your financial obligation for the current year and how much have you funded for that current year? That's all it is. So let's just say if our amortized number for the current year was $200,000, that's all we had to report for that current year. Now, over time, would have built up, we would have caught up what the total obligation would have been, but the 43, 45 requirement was only to do the current year obligations. And so we did comply with that in 2009. 2010 is the start of the fiscal year when we first complied with that statement 43, 45. But then in June 2015, GASB sat down and said, you know what? No, we don't think that that's what should be. It should really be total obligation. So they revised the statement and came up with the statement number 75, which said, we are revising the financial reporting requirements for OPEB, and it had to be reported by fiscal year beginning June 15, 2017. And they said what the change is basically you have to record the total OPEB obligations on the financial statement. So not just the current year, but in totality, what you've accrued so far, what the benefits have accrued so far, and what you have provided for funding so far. So you just need to report the total, total net OPEB obligation. So that's what GASB 75 was. And we had to comply by 2017, 2018. And so, we did go ahead and did the actuarial reports for the GASB 75, and we went ahead and complied with it. Why does it apply to us, the OPEB liability? It's because the district provides healthcare premium to retirees, and those healthcare premiums are as follows. There are two different tier of employees. When the PEPRA came out for the pension, at that time, we also were negotiating the MOUs. And so basically this is at the discretion of the district. And we said, well, let's create the two-tier benefits as well, because since PEPRA only deals with the pension part of it, with CalPERS, not with the OPEB, because OPEB is really in the control of the district. So tier one employees, anybody that joined prior to July 1, 2013, if they have spent less than 15 years with the district and retire, they get $540 a month towards the healthcare retiree premium. If they spend more than 15 years with the district, in 2020, they got $1,293 towards the retiree healthcare premium, and that number is escalated by 3% each year. And all those are in the MOU, the negotiated MOU. Anybody that joined the district after July 1, 2013, they were considered tier 2 employees, and they only got $540 towards the healthcare premium, regardless of how many years they spent with the district. So that's what we have in terms of healthcare premium. And because we provide that benefit, we are subject to GASB 75. So what is the net OPEB liability? And it's similar to on the pension side, but different terminology. It's the OPEB liability minus the fiduciary net position, and that's the net OPEB liability. So what exactly is the OPEB liability? That's the portion of the actuarial present value of the projected benefit payments, and that is attributable to past period of employee service as of the measurement date. So both pension and OPEB, they both deal with the measurement date. But this one is because it's in control of the district, we are much more current in terms of the reporting date. The OPEB numbers and liability numbers that you're going to be seeing, that's going to be as of June 30th, 2020, because we go ahead and we hire the actuarial company to perform the calculations for us. We have the updated numbers, and we are able to provide those updated numbers, as opposed to CalPERS is a large agency that doesn't have the information available readily in a timely manner. So that's why they are 1 year behind. What is the fiduciary net position? That's basically similar to the on the pension side as explained. It's the asset or the amount of assets held in the pension trust plan, and also referred to as the market value of assets. So it's basically anything that you've accumulated towards the OPEB liability that you've set aside, that's going to be considered the asset. The net OPEB liability is again the difference of the total liability minus whatever you've accrued so far, and so the difference between that is called the OPEB liability. So I'm showing the 3 years net OPEB liability history, and the first line, which is the net OPEB liability, as you can see, it was $4.1 million in 2018. As of 2019, it was 4.5. And then as of June 30th, 2020, that number went down again to $4.1 million. And we'll go over on the next slide on explaining what the changes are and why those changes are. The discount rate, they are supposed to use the blended rate of what the market rate is. And so that's why you'll see the interest rates going down, the discount rates going down from 3.5% to 3.13 and then to 2.45 for 2020 was what was calculated. We have been setting aside $100,000 funding starting with 2018, 2019. And so you'll see that the $100,000 collected in 2019 and then $100,000 collected in 2020, that equates to $200,000 so far. And if you were to put a funding status number against that $4.1 million liability, you'll say we are about 4.85% funded on our unfunded liability. So that number, as we set aside that number, it'll continue to grow up. So the change in liability for 2019, why $437,000? That's one of the components, was because the discount rate changed from 3.5 to 3.13, and then also the current year expenses minus any contributions that we made on a current year. We are paying for about 13 employees that have retired from the district, and so we are contributing towards the OPEB healthcare premiums, and so that basically gets calculated in the current year cost minus what we've contributed. So the increase there was about $430,000. In 2020, the discount rate changed, so that number should have gone up, but then there was some net change in the census, employee census, the premiums, and the healthcare trend. So when these actuarials calculate the number for the OPEB liability, they do look at the healthcare trends over a period of time. They do it on a 30-year basis because this is a 30-year amortization report. The healthcare premiums, they look at the healthcare premiums as well on the district itself, not the industry trends, and then also the census data. They look at the employee demographic data. So from the last time when we did the report in 2018, by the way, this report gets done every 2 years, but then it's refreshed every year. So when it's refreshed, in 2019 was a refreshed report. They did not do the census data change because they don't do all of that. They just look at the financial numbers and refresh that based on the current trends. But when you do the actual report every 2 years, every other year, they look at the entire census data for the district. We provide them all our employees, who is on the list, which employees have since been gone, which employees have retired and are taking the benefit. So they look at all of that stuff. There was a big change on the census data because there was about 3 or 4 employees that had left the agency but never used the benefit. A couple of them have retired and did not draw on the benefit. A couple of them had changed jobs. And so basically, if you imagine that they've been sitting on the employee census data and have like 5 years or 10 years of service, but so their unfunded liability is being accrued in that report. But now all of a sudden they don't work for us anymore. They leave and go work for somebody else. That liability number disappears. For that employee, that number drops off because that employee is no longer there. Sure, a new employee probably does, a replacement employee comes on board, but their unfunded liability is not going to be a huge number at that point because they're going to start accruing the benefit from day one when they are hired. So that's why there was a big shift, big change. And that number, actually, the unfunded liability number went down by 425 in fiscal year 20. So what has the district done? Same thing as similar on the pension side. We've set aside 100,000 in 18-19. So 100 was on the pension side, 100 was on the OPEB side. In 2019, that another 100,000, and that's what I was showing in that earlier slide, that accrued set aside money so far is $200,000. In 2021, we're going to have another 100,000. So we would have set aside $300,000 by the end of 2021. I don't know what the unfunded number is going to be. Because the census data is not going to change, because in 2021, it's just going to be a financial refresher of the report. So most likely that unfunded liability will go up a little bit, not by a lot, but we'll have to see where that trend is. But as I was showing on the previous slide with the unfunded liability over the last 3 years, as long as we are looking at it, as long as we know we are aware of it, that's the good thing. As long as the board is updated with the information, board is aware of the information. GASB 75 again is the requirement to report the unfunded number. There is no requirement to fund it, and again, this is on a long-term basis. For the current active fiscal years, or the current fiscal years, the retirees, active retirees that we have on hand, we are funding those from our annual budget. So in 2020, fiscal year 2020, we had paid about $117,000 for the active retiree benefits, plus we set aside $100,000. So if you can imagine, we actually did contribute about $217,000 for that current year. So, as we go along, we are continuing to fund. We have to fund for the retirees through our current budget. But then in addition to that, we are also setting aside money towards the outstanding obligation. So that's all I have on that.
Thank you, Suresh. Any questions from directors?
Suresh, when you turn 65, you still stay on that program, or do you go to Social Security or Medicare?
So they are required to join Medicare when they go 65.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Other questions from directors? I don't have any. Shall we see if there are any raised hands from the public?
Don't see any raised hands.
Okay. All right, then. I move that we recommend to the board that it receive this report.
I'll second it.
And I want to, well, let's do the roll call and then I'll weigh in on the next item.
Okay, let's roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Paul.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
So I just want to throw up a suggestion. Items 8, 9, 10, and 11, if there are no specific questions you've identified, could be taken all together as one. It's 2 adoptions and 2 approvals. That would be similar to how Jeannie Byrne had created a consent calendar option for this committee. But if you do have specific questions, then we'll just, we can take them.
Director, Chair
Madam
Edwards.
Chair, I would suggest that you go out to the public on all those items to see if there's any comment.
Before we have questions from directors?
Yes.
All right, can we see if any members of the public would like to comment? Please raise your hand if you're participating by phone. Dial *9 to unmute yourself.
And John Tilley does have his hand up.
Okay. Please unmute yourself, Mr. Tilley.
Hello?
Yeah,
Oh, good. Hey, I was gonna comment on this a little bit later, but maybe now this is a better time to do it. It was in regard to the legal fees that are being represented on items further downstream on the agenda. I'm seeing that there's about $190,000 of legal fees that are being represented versus Measure J expenditures, which are more around $750,000. From my personal point of view, while within the Measure J number, there is a certain line item that is legal fees, presumably for the hiring of attorneys. I personally, and I think just in terms of a view of the proceedings of the district, see the entire expenditure on Measure J as a legal item. I think it's just not a good labeling of that expense to minimize, especially with that follow-up bar graph that seems to indicate that the district is spending less and less on legal fees when really you're not. You're spending more and more on legal fees as represented by Measure J. Measure J is a legal proceeding, and I think that it should be treated as such versus dispersed among appraisal costs and so forth. Those appraisal costs are clearly dedicated to a legal proceeding. And I think out of transparency and fairness of accounting, it'd be appropriate to count the entire amount spent on Measure J as a legal fee. My thoughts, obviously you disagree from the way you did your accounting, but I think that's something that should be recognized and considered. I would encourage the board and really with your financial reporting to view that as more than just a dispersed amount among various functions, but really treat it as what it is, and that is three-figure costs for appraisals, $168,000 for appraisals, for instance, that feed into a legal process and therefore should be treated and counted and accounted for as a legal expense. Thank you for letting me voice this opinion.
Okay, comments noted, Mr. Tilley. Any other comments from the public? Any other member of the public wish to comment? All right, so Ms. Dave Stolt has made a suggestion about how we can do the other directors have any questions about items 8, 9, and 10?
And 11.
11.
No questions on 8, 9, or 10, but I think at some time, Jim, we need to address John Tilley's and General Counsel concern. You can do it at a regular meeting if you want to, so the full public can hear while we separating those funds like that.
Yeah, and it's a good point, well made. We did make a specific decision to lump all of the Measure J related costs together, so the public would be able to see what Measure J is really costing us in terms of consultants and attorneys. While Mr. Tilley's correct that it's a legal proceeding, it's kind of an atypical legal proceeding and not one that the district chose with its own discretion, rather was put upon us through Measure J. So we made the decision to separate it so you could identify and perhaps at some point capitalize, meaning reimburse yourself for all or a portion of these Measure J related expenses. But yeah, it's one or the other. You either slide it into the legal and then you don't necessarily keep track of what Measure J is costing you, or you keep it separate as a Measure J expenditure.
And Dave, just to add to that, we are, like you said, we are tracking all of the Measure J as project cost, and that's perfectly fine in accordance with GAAP. And all of our audits have gone through that and looked at it, all of our auditors, and they've opined that it is perfectly fine the way we accrue it.
Yeah.
And in closing on our this month agenda, we're going to be talking about Measure J costs, right?
Yeah, it's on. It's like the last discussion item.
Yeah, about the last item, but that could be brought back up so the full public can understand.
Yeah.
Why our legal fund. That's where I'm going. All right. Thank you.
Director Anderson, do you have any questions on the?
Yeah, I have a quick question for Suresh. I'm just trying to see where you've got a listing here of all the rebates that are paid out, and I assume that's an expense. So I don't know where it's listed. I'm just curious. I can't find it.
Oh, it would be on item number 9.
I'm looking at Exhibit 9.
Yes, Exhibit 9, and
The
it'll be
December,
Exhibit 9B.
oh, yeah, I saw that, but I'm just looking for it on the, revenue and expense statement in
Oh,
December.
yes. So on the expenses side, it will be captured together with the project expenses.
Okay,
We are
And that-
tracking that as a project cost.
and that happened that's just a listing, that 16,999 is just a listing for December.
For the month of December, correct. There was
Okay.
none in November.
Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Okay, per Dave Stoltz's suggestion, I would like to make a motion to recommend to the board that it consider adoption of the treasurer's reports for November and December 2020, and consider approval of the financial activity reports enumerated in items 10 and 11.
I'll second that.
And I hope that was clear enough. Okay,
Yeah.
roll call, please.
Director Anderson,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Director Edwards.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you.
Items 12, 13, and 14 are informational, and they will appear in the, or 13 and 14 will appear in the board packet. Does 12 appear in the board packet, Suresh?
Yes, it does.
Okay, so they'll all be available.
Well, 12, 13, and 14 will be at the board.
Now, we already basically covered item 15. That's informational as well. It only goes to this committee. It doesn't go anywhere else. So this is just a monitoring activity because when the CFO and the GM got here, the legal expenses were quite high and the revenues were quite low. And so we felt the need to have a little closer reporting and analysis of this very large annual budget item. So that takes us to 16, which is the annual meeting schedule for approval.
Okay, any questions or comments about the proposed meeting schedule?
Oh,
Yeah, I only had one. So everybody recognize that it's a 2 p.m. time? We're all
Yeah.
good with that now?
oh, I didn't see that. When did that change?
Right here.
That is the proposed schedule.
Yeah, no, that works for me. Later times conflict with other meetings,
Huh.
so
Oh, it's fine by me.
Okay.
I guess it's fine by me then.
Y'all might get through by 5. I won't be in those. I'll be listening, but I won't.
No, we'll get quicker.
Yeah,
I promise.
that's
Well,
all right.
Me
Doing
It's
too.
also
good, doing
the, it's
good.
also the annual GASB reports take a.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing good. 2 o'clock is a good time.
And your chair will learn the ropes.
There you go.
She's doing great.
Yeah, you're doing all right.
With your help. Thank you. Too kind.
So we look for a motion to approve the meeting schedule.
I move
I'll
to approve it.
move that we approve the meeting schedule.
Second. And roll call, please.
Director Edwards,
Yes.
Director Paul,
Yes.
Director Anderson.
Yes.
Motion passes 3-0.
Thank you. 17.
Okay, there is a revised board agenda. where, let's see, all of the consent items are roughly the same. Oh, good. Thank you, Sarah. So you can see it on your screen in screen sharing. And the important changes, the consent calendar is roughly the same and covers the items we talked about. There is an addition, and I'm trying to find it as we
It's number
speak.
15.
No, there's one before that.
Okay.
Number 13 is a addition, Dave.
No, not from the packet.
Okay.
Hmm.
Oh, the Zim Industries. No, that's there too. All right, well, the consent is labeled 1 through 13, and we have 12 items that we just covered in this meeting. So somewhere nestled in there is an additional item.
Dave, item 8, item 8 is already shown in info, so it doesn't need to be on the consent. That's the one that's on the admin agenda.
Yep, gotcha. So we can do that. But then we did add item 15, which is a status report on the general rate case at the request of Director Paul. And we've moved from discussion to item 19. This is now an action item. The Water Demand Committee last week heard an analysis of the newest AMBAG regional growth forecast and what its impact on water demand might be going forward. And this will be considered as an amendment to the approved supply and demand report from May of last year. So that was moved from discussion to action. And then as Director Edwards pointed out, item 20 will be some public discussion of spending on Measure J to date. And we can have a little bit of that conversation about why we pull it out to address it separately. And that concludes the agenda review. Yep.
Dave, we got reaffirming committees on consent, right?
Yeah, and it's not all the committees. It's just the
The
General
3 for
Counsel.
division. Okay, I see it.
Yeah, Division 3.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay.
Where is it?
It's item
Number 12.
13 on your screen right now.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. The old number 12. Okay.
Yeah, so when the board approved them in January, they were approved with the division number. So Division 3 representative, not the actual name. So this will confirm them with Safwat Malik's name in there. So it's not reopening all the committees. It's just confirming Safwat as the person on the committee.
And should that be in the little box on the first page too, instead of saying vacant for Division 3?
Yeah, probably. We got the new mayor's name in there.
Good.
Okay.
Yep. Well taken. I think Joelle is off the call, but we'll make sure that gets addressed. Sarah, maybe you can remember to tell him, or you can.
Yes, I'll take care of it with
Yeah,
Joelle.
who's ever got control at this point. And that concludes all of our items.
Well then,
Hey.
I thank you for your patience and your guidance. And I guess we can adjourn.
All right, good job.
Have a good evening.
Have a nice evening, everybody.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.